Hello. My Godzilla movie is centered around the US-led wars in Iraq and Afghanistan in the early 2000s. These wars came about after the 9/11 attacks in 2001 as a response to the national sorrow that the US felt. Almost immediately after the attacks, the US launched full-scale military operations in Afghanistan under the pretense of eradicating the Taliban, and Iraq under the pretense of finding WMDs. These wars ultimately resulted in mass civilian deaths, environmental damage, and many generations worth of trauma for the Iraqis and Afghans. Godzilla movies have always acted as metaphors for the consequence of human violence and the outcome of war. My pitch will be in the same way, exploring the pain and suffering the Iraqis felt in the midst of the war in Iraq. The movie is called Imperial America vs. Godzilla. It is an alternative history coming-of-age film wherein the United States invades Iraq with carpet bombings and futuristic mech robots, shown from the perspective of Iraqi high school students working on a project for the Middle Eastern Youth Journalism Initiative. The main protagonists are Aisha, Hamza, and Abbas, along with Godzilla. The main antagonists are the US Army led by General John Swatter, who is also a mech pilot. The movie will open with the kids being shown working on a news report about the recent 9/11 attacks. As they are working on said report, American F-16s will be heard flying overhead, followed by distant explosions. We will then follow the students as they turn the objective of their project into covering the invasion by the US. The first third of the movie will explore the damage being done by the American strikes and the awakening of Godzilla from the Red Sea. The middle of the movie will then show how Godzilla rises up and blows up American jets and wreaks havoc on American bases. Then, the US is shown to be deploying their mechs, one of which is piloted by John Swatter. A fight will be shown in which Godzilla is defeated by the mechs. Godzilla will then retreat into the desert to gather his strength. In the meanwhile, we will follow the kids as they travel across Iraq, documenting the carnage. The third act of the movie will show Godzilla rising from the dunes, having powered up and taking on a complacent US Army, and fighting John Swatter in the climax of the movie, as a parallel insurgent uprising has taken place to take out the auxiliary US forces. John Swatter will be defeated by Godzilla, forcing the US to retreat and leave Iraq. Godzilla returns to the Red Sea now that peace has been achieved, and the kids win first prize in the journalism contest. The first theme explored in this film is about war through civilian eyes, because in my story we are shown the war from the perspective of the students. We see how the childhood and the education of these children is obliterated, and how the truth from the ground level is completely different from the official narrative being pushed by the imperial forces, which ties into my next theme, which is about media, narrative, and truth. Because the protagonists are student journalists, the film naturally explores how wars are documented and framed. And so the person who controls the story controls the moral narrative. So on the US side, people might believe what their military is telling them, but that's completely different from what's happening on the ground. And the point of the state kids being journalists and them winning the prize in the end, after the war is complete, will show how what was happening on the ground level was completely different from what the US was being pushed, and this will come out on an international stage when the awards are being presented in the end at the journalism contest. Another key theme of my film is blowback, the unintended consequences of military violence. This is very traditional for Godzilla, just like we have seen in our past four movies in university. Nuclear testing awakens Godzilla. Here, large-scale bombing awakens a destructive force that no one can fully control. And so violence creates consequences that go beyond their original purpose. There's also the element of technology versus humanity here. The American mechs represent advanced mechanized warfare, which is very distant and powerful and impersonal and not very related to nature. Whereas Godzilla is a contrast to that. He represents a raw and natural force which is emotional and uncontrollable, just like how the Japanese felt. Here, the Iraqis feel the same way. These battles are symbolic and not just a physical show for the movies. The coming of age, as mentioned previously, element comes from the point of the students who start with a simple school project but end up documenting a very major piece of history. Through this conflict, they grow up very fast and develop a stronger sense of truth and responsibility. Lastly, there is the moral ambiguity element here. Because even though Godzilla is fighting the invading forces, he is not a clean hero. Just like the movies we've seen before, he causes destruction. Even though he's helping fight off an invading force, he's still destroying a very big part of Iraq and the civilian population. And so this keeps the story in line with classic Godzilla, and therefore it's very easy to tie this into. And all of that is exactly why I feel that this would be a great addition to the Godzilla franchise. Because this is completely in line with past Godzilla movies, yet this explores something that has never been done before in Godzilla, wherein this is such a direct attack on US imperialism. And this also takes Godzilla to a new place where he's never been, which is the Middle East. And this is a part of US war history which has never been explored. And so this would be a very new foundation and a new avenue